The obsidian chamber rose like a vast black cathedral suspended inside the Dyson ring's inner curvature. Its polished floor reflected the stars beyond the transparent walls, a reminder that the Vraxian Empire believed it ruled not just worlds but the void itself. Every surface conveyed power, cold, absolute, unquestioned. Delegates filled the tiered platforms circling the central dais. Their armor gleamed in ceremonial patterns, each design proclaiming triumph. Conquered species sat on the lower rings, heads bowed, allowed to observe but never to speak. Above them towered the true rulers, the Vraxian nobility, stern figures with angular features and eyes like molten metal. A ripple spread across the hall as the doors opened. General Skarn Val stepped through, walking with the measured gait of a man who had survived too much. His armor bore old scars, etched across the plates like claw marks on stone. The left shoulder carried a deep groove where plasma had nearly taken his arm. Even among warriors, he stood out, an artifact of war in a room full of politicians. Whispers followed him. The only commander who fled from a pre-FTL species. Shameful. Humans broke him. Skarn heard every word yet kept his gaze straight. He had endured far worse than court gossip. At the dais stood High Chancellor Zorith Malvek, tall and imposing, draped in imperial crimson. His expression carried the composure of a man convinced of his own destiny. When he raised a hand, silence swept the chamber with almost ritual precision. Members of the War Council, Zorith began, his voice resonant. Our frontier colonies have suffered coordinated attacks. The perpetrators are the Terran species from Sol. A wave of amusement rose from the council seats. A few chuckled openly. Zorith allowed it, smiling thinly. Primitive mammals, a noble muttered. Barely beyond chemical rockets, added another. Yet they raised 3 military outposts, Zorith said. A curiosity worth addressing. The laughter faded. Curiosity, in imperial politics, meant future conquest. Skarn stepped forward. Chancellor, may I speak? An uncomfortable hush fell through the hall. Zorith tilted his head, amused. General Val. The Council welcomes your perspective. Several Vraxian nobles smirked. Skarn ignored them. He looked directly at Zorith. Do not underestimate them. The Chancellor raised a brow. Enlighten us. Skarn exhaled once, steadying the tremor in his voice. Humans fight with an intensity I've never encountered. They adapt rapidly. Their command structure allows small units to make independent decisions without waiting for orders. When cornered, they become more effective, not less. Confusion flickered across a few faces. Others remained skeptical. Zorith gestured lightly. Your previous encounter with them ended in retreat. Perhaps your fear clouds your judgment. Skarn's jaw tightened. My fear spared my legion from annihilation. A murmur ran through the chamber. He continued, voice firm. When we first encountered human marines, we believed them inferior. Our scans showed weak musculature, fragile bones, and limited sensory range. But they compensated with creativity. They used terrain we considered useless. They fought on after losing limbs. One soldier, trapped, bleeding, half-buried, killed 4 of my warriors with a shard of metal. The hall fell silent. Skarn pressed on. They improvise constantly. Fire, debris, wreckage, anything becomes a weapon. They learn instantly from failure. What works once will not work twice. They move without predictability. And they do not break. Counselor Velas scoffed. Stories. Exaggerations. Skarn's eyes locked onto him. I watched a human charge through burning dust to drag a wounded comrade 15 meters under plasma fire. He should have collapsed. Instead, he roared and came at us with a broken arm, wielding a severed support beam like a club. Even Velith hesitated at that. That was one soldier, Zorith said. An anomaly. Skarn shook his head. It was typical. Zorith waved dismissively. Enough. The Empire does not tremble before isolated incidents. Terra is a minor world. Our legions will sweep it aside. Skarn stepped closer. Chancellor, your legions will bleed. And so they shall, Zorath replied coldly. War demands sacrifice. Not needless sacrifice. Gasps whispered through the chamber. Speaking to the chancellor like that bordered on treason. Zora smiled, a predator savoring dominance. Do you suggest we retreat from a species that only recently learned to escape its own gravity well? I suggest caution, Skarn answered. Learn from my mistakes. Humans are unpredictable. If we proceed blindly, we will awaken something we cannot contain. The chancellor leaned forward. What exactly do you fear, General? Skarn's words came quiet, but carried enough weight to still the entire room. I fear an enemy who sees every defeat as an opportunity to grow stronger. Silence stretched. Then Zorath laughed. The Council has heard enough. We will not allow superstition to pollute strategic judgment. He turned to the assembled delegates. All in favor of launching a full-scale planetary invasion of Earth? Hands rose across the chamber. A wave of imperial arrogance made manifest. Skarn closed his eyes. The vote was unanimous. Zorath lifted his hand. So decreed. The Empire will claim Terra within the cycle. The chamber erupted in triumphant chants. Skarn remained unmoving, absorbing the decision like a blade driven slowly into the spine. When the noise settled, Zorath looked at him. Your objections are noted and dismissed. You may step down. Skarn bowed stiffly. As you command. He turned to leave, walking with the rigid calm of a man carrying the weight of a future tragedy. As he neared the doors, a young officer whispered, General, is it true? Are humans really that dangerous? Skarn paused only long enough to answer without looking back. They are worse. Outside the chamber, the Dyson Ring's corridors stretched endlessly. He walked them alone, listening to the distant hum of power systems. Fleets would soon deploy. Soldiers would march. The Empire would advance in arrogant confidence, unaware of the storm waiting beyond the frontier. Skarn halted at a viewport. Earth hung in holographic projection marked Target Red. Imperial analysts had scrawled tactical estimates beside it, casualty projections, predicted surrender timelines, invasion routes. The numbers were bold. Optimistic. Wrong. He touched the hologram's surface. The projection rippled under his fingertips. You've doomed us all, he whispered. The Dyson Ring continued its silent orbit, blind to the truths spoken in a deserted corridor. The Empire had just declared war on the most dangerous soldiers in the galaxy. And the humans were waiting. The Vraxian invasion fleet tore through the void like a spear of light. Hundreds of capital ships emerged from warp around Harrow 4, their hulls glinting with the cold precision of Imperial engineering. Support craft followed in structured waves, each movement rehearsed, measured, and confident. The officers on the command bridge of the dreadnought Sovereign Eclipse watched the tactical displays with satisfaction. This was routine conquest. Admiral Vraxian folded his arms. No human vessels detected. Their colony appears undefended. His second-in-command, Valara, frowned. Strange. Intelligence reported armed resistance. Resistance from them? Vraxian scoffed. We expected too much. Valara didn't answer. Something about the silent planet below unsettled her. Landing craft detached and streaked toward the surface, burning through the cloud layer. As they descended, Harrow IV's terrain unfolded, ashen plains, wind-carved ridges, and the outlines of ruined agricultural structures. Not a single human in sight. Strike Commander Relkus touched down first. His troops deployed with mechanical precision, forming a perimeter. Dust swirled around their armored boots. Area clear, Relkus reported. Thermal scans show no hostiles. Vraxian's voice crackled through the calm. Advance. Capture the colony command building. We secure this world within the hour. Relkus signaled his squads. They moved in tight formation, passing abandoned farming equipment and shattered dwellings. Doors hung open, swaying slightly in the wind. Everything felt staged, as if the colony had vanished minutes before their arrival. A trooper approached Relkus. Commander, we're finding footprints circling the landing zones. Relkus crouched and examined the prints. Human boots. Dozens of sets. Too clean. Too deliberate. His throat tightened. They're watching us. Before the trooper could respond, a voice drifted through every helmet speaker, calm, almost amused. Welcome to Harrow 4. The invasion force froze. The voice continued, speaking in flawless Vraxian. We've been expecting you. Relkus spun toward his perimeter. Shields up. Defensive stance. The ground erupted. Explosive charges, buried deep beneath the soil, detonated with brutal synchronization. Shockwaves ripped through the formation. Troopers were thrown skyward, armor buckling under the force. Dust swallowed the daylight. From the rising storm, human silhouettes emerged, armored figures moving with silent precision. Their visors glowed faint blue, cutting through the haze. They advanced in staggered patterns, each movement calculated. Railgun shots cracked like thunder. One Vraxian officer's head snapped back as a slug punched clean through his helmet. Another fell, chest armor caved inward. Relkus roared commands, trying to reassemble his troops. Return fire! Form ranks! But humans didn't give them the chance. One Marine vaulted over shattered debris, landing behind a Vraxian squad. His rifle barked 3 times, 3 targets dropped before they fully turned. Another human used the collapsing dust as cover, sliding across the ground and firing from a prone angle that defied standard Vraxian training. Valera watched the chaos from the fleet's bridge. Admiral, this is not a disorganized militia. Vraxian stared in disbelief. Impossible. They shouldn't match our training. Yet they weren't matching, it was worse. They were outthinking, outpacing, and dismantling the invasion force with horrifying economy. On the ground, Relkus retreated behind a broken transport hull. Where are they coming from? He shouted. A voice answered from behind him. Everywhere you failed to look. Relkus spun, firing instinctively. The Marine moved faster than expected, knocking his rifle aside and driving a combat blade into his gauntlet seam. Relkus staggered, weapon clattering to the dirt. The human held him by the collar. Through the cracked visor, Relkus saw eyes fierce with focus, not rage, not madness, just absolute commitment. Leave, the Marine said. Tell your commanders this world isn't theirs. Then he shoved Relkus aside and vanished into the storm. The Imperial formation collapsed completely. Troopers broke rank, scrambling toward extraction points. Human drones swooped overhead, dropping EMP nets that tangled retreating soldiers. Snipers fired at key officers, shattering what remained of command cohesion. Valera's voice reached Relkus through the calm. Commander, report. We're overrun. Relkus gasped. Full withdrawal. I repeat, full. A rail slug smashed into his compact, cutting the transmission. Within 20 minutes, the invasion of Harrow 4, planned to last a single hour, became a massacre. 41,000 Vraxian soldiers lay dead or incapacitated. Human casualties, unknown, likely minimal. They retrieved their wounded with efficient speed, leaving nothing for scanners to analyze. On the Sovereign Eclipse, the bridge was silent. Officers struggled to comprehend the scale of the disaster. Valera swallowed hard. Admiral, permission to retreat and reassess? Vraxian's pride cracked. We retreat. The fleet pulled back, engines burning hot to escape orbit. Back in the obsidian chamber, the War Council erupted in confusion as reports streamed in. This can't be accurate. 40,000 casualties. Human weaponry is too advanced. No, their strategy is advanced. Zoreth paced before the holographic map, jaw clenched. They caught 1 legion off guard. Nothing more. We will overwhelm them with numbers. Some counselors exchanged uncertain glances. An aide approached Zoreth. General Skarn Val has arrived at your request. The air in the chamber thickened. Skarn walked in, posture rigid, eyes quiet with the weight of confirmation. The council members who mocked him a cycle ago now avoided his gaze entirely. Zoreth spoke first, feigning composure. General, you warned us of their adaptability. Very well. Teach us. How do we counter them? Skarn examined the casualty hollow, red dots across Harrow for like a spreading infection. You cannot defeat them by relying on numbers alone, he said. Their strength isn't technology. It's flexibility. They think in ways we don't. They turn failures into weapons. A counselor snapped. Then what do you suggest? Surrender? No, Skarn replied. Caution. Negotiation. A strategic pause. Zorith shook his head. Cowardice. Skarn inhaled sharply. This is not cowardice. This is survival. But the Chancellor had made up his mind. He turned toward the Council. Prepare full mobilization. We will crush Terra and erase this embarrassment. Skarn stared at him, recognizing the glint of pride that had doomed empires throughout history. If you continue, you'll lose far more than a legion. Zorith dismissed him with a wave. Return to your exile. Skarn's voice lowered. Humans have already left Harrow 4. They will not wait for you to strike again. They'll come for your infrastructure, your fleets, your leaders. They will choose the moment. Zorith smirked. Let them. That night, Skarn returned to his remote outpost. He stood alone at the viewport as starships streaked across the silent darkness, carrying legions toward a war they couldn't win. Far beyond Imperial borders, Earth's fleets prepared their counterstrike. Human marines cleaned their weapons. Engineers tuned railguns. Officers studied Vraxian tactics with analytical hunger. When the order came, humanity launched. Their message echoed across the void. Stand down. This is your final warning. Skarn closed his eyes. The storm he tried to stop had begun. Panic moved through the Vraxian capital like a spreading fracture. The shimmering spires of the central districts, once symbols of absolute confidence, now flickered under emergency power cycles. News streams ran continuous updates of collapsing front lines, intercepted transmissions, and the unnerving advance of human strike groups across multiple sectors. Inside the Imperial Command Nexus, officers crowded around holoscreens showing red icons blinking out one after another. Subjugated species had risen in coordinated rebellions, emboldened by humanity's assaults. Supply lines severed. Shipyards sabotaged. Elite legions overwhelmed by tactics they couldn't predict. High Chancellor Zorith stormed into the chamber, robes dragging across the polished floor. His composure was gone. His eyes burned with frustrated denial. Report! Admiral Saraxis bowed stiffly. Human fleets breached 3 border systems simultaneously. Their ground units bypass our defensive grids, targeting command centers instead of fortifications. Retake them? We tried. They counter every maneuver before we finish executing it. Zorith slammed his fist against the control dais, making the holoscreens wobble. Excuses? I want solutions. A junior strategist stepped forward cautiously. Chancellor, we may need to consider negotiation. The words hung like poison. Zorith turned slowly. What did you say? Human forces avoid civilian casualties. Their broadcasts insist they seek de-escalation. If we... Zorith's expression hardened. You suggest surrender? No, only... The Chancellor snapped his fingers. 2 guards seized the strategist and dragged him toward the exit. Cowards have no place in this chamber. The doors slid shut behind the struggling officer. Admiral Saraxis exhaled shakily. Chancellor, if we continue on this course, we risk catastrophic collapse. Zorith ignored him. His gaze fixed on the central hollow showing Earth's flagship cutting through the Empire's outer defenses, moving with the confidence of a predator closing in. Prepare the Scorch Orbital Protocol, he said. If we cannot conquer Earth, we erase it. Gasps filled the room. Chancellor, Saraxis said sharply, that would kill billions of civilians. A necessary cost. By whose judgment? Zorith didn't answer. He walked away, leaving the command staff frozen in stunned disbelief. On a remote asteroid outpost, General Skarn Val adjusted the wrap around his injured arm while reviewing the latest data bursts. Human forces weren't simply winning, They were choosing targets with surgical intelligence. Communication hubs disabled, but hospitals untouched. Drone factories seized, not destroyed. Every strike showed intention, not cruelty. A group of officers, many of them former students, entered his chamber. "General," said Captain Lyras, "the Chancellor intends to execute Scorch Orbital. He will attack Earth directly." Skarn's eyes narrowed. "He would doom the Empire to extinction." "We need you," Lyras said. "We're forming a coalition. Admirals, commanders, even civil ministers. We plan to remove Zorith peacefully. If we act now, there's a chance to save everyone." Skarn looked at them. Their faces carried fear, resolve, and desperation. Years ago, he had trained them to think beyond doctrine. Now they stood ready to defy the most powerful being in the Empire. He rose, adjusting his armor with slow purpose. "Then we end this before he obliterates us all." Human fleets barreled deeper into Imperial territory. Their formation shifted constantly, never predictable. Autonomous drones expanded in wide spirals, mapping weaknesses and relaying data back to Fleet Command. On the flagship Horizon Spear, Admiral Helena Riker studied the Vraxian capital on the main display. "Orbital defense is unstable," her sensor officer said. "Multiple power fluctuations. Internal chaos." Riker folded her arms. "They're breaking. Maintain minimal force. Confirm civilian safety corridors." "Humans, are we actually invading to stabilize them?" a lieutenant asked. "We're ending the war," Riker answered. "Not starting a new one." The bridge lights dimmed as the fleet entered the final approach corridor. No Imperial ships intercepted them. The path to the capital lay open. Inside the obsidian chamber, Zorith input the final authorization codes for the Scorch Orbital Protocol. The giant hologram of Earth rotated slowly above him, target markers glowing brighter as he prepared the firing sequence. His hands trembled, but not with hesitation, with anticipation. Footsteps echoed behind him. "Zorith," Skarn called out. "Step away from the console." The Chancellor turned. Skarn stood with a cadre of officers armed and ready. Their expressions carried a single message: this ended today. Zorith smiled faintly. "So the coward leads a rebellion." Skarn didn't rise to the insult. "Your pride has cost enough lives. This war must stop. The Empire bows to no one," Zorith said. "Least of all to Deathworlders pretending at civilization." Lyras stepped forward. "Deactivate the protocol. Now." Zorith placed his palm back on the console. "If I cannot win, I ensure our enemies burn." Skarn moved instantly. He lunged across the chamber, tackling Zorith away from the control dais. Zorith thrashed back, striking Skarn's wounded arm. The two toppled into a support pillar as the console blared warnings. "Self-destruct sequence initiated," the chamber AI droned. Skarn's eyes widened. Zorith wasn't trying to destroy Earth, he was destroying the entire chamber. "Override!" Skarn shouted. "Override unavailable," the AI replied. The floor trembled. Energy conduits ruptured, spraying sparks across the hall. Officers scattered, dragging wounded comrades toward the exits. Zorith clawed at Skarn's throat. Skarn struck him once, hard, ending his resistance. The explosion ripped through the chamber. A shockwave hurled Skarn backward. He struck the wall, armor cracking, lungs seizing. Smoke filled his vision. Zorith lay motionless beneath a collapsed pillar, crushed beyond recognition. When the tremor subsided, the chamber was half destroyed. Fires burned along the walls, but the self-destruct had halted before reaching full detonation. Skarn tried to stand. His legs buckled, but Lyra's reached him just in time. "It's over, General," she whispered. Skarn glanced at Zorith's remains. "Not yet." Human ships descended toward the capital as emergency broadcasts reached every district. Instead of weapons fire, streams of medical carriers and peacekeeping transports filled the skies. The Vraxian populace watched, bewildered, as humans tended to the injured and stabilized failing infrastructure. Inside a recovery ward, Skarn lay propped on a medical slab, bandages covering half his torso. The door opened quietly. Admiral Helena Riker stepped in, accompanied by 2 aides. She dismissed them with a nod and approached Skarn alone. "You're General Val," she said. Skarn gave a tired, humorless smile. "I assumed you're here to dictate terms." "Not conquest," Riker replied. "Reform. Freedom for the subjugated. Disbandment of oppressive legions. No retaliation against civilians." Skarn studied her carefully. "Why show mercy? You could dismantle the Empire." Riker met his gaze steadily. "War teaches many lessons. One of them is this: a civilization built on mercy endures longer than one built on fear." Skarn exhaled, letting the truth settle. Riker added, "You tried to stop this war. We recognize that." Skarn looked out the window at the reconstructed skyline, human ships hovering alongside Vraxian vessels in cautious cooperation. "A second chance?" he murmured. Riker nodded. "If your people choose it." Weeks later, Skarn stood on a balcony overlooking the capital. The air carried a sense of unfamiliar calm. Flags of liberated species fluttered beside the Vraxian crest. Below, workers, human and alien, repaired shattered streets. For the first time in decades, Skarn felt peace. He rested a hand on the railing and whispered to the quiet city, "May we be wiser than those who led us here." The sun rose over the Dyson ring, casting new light on an empire that had almost died, yet survived because humility finally prevailed.